What is up, you guys? My name is Connor Buckley, and this is the Anxiety and Depression Vlogs, episode 27. And today we're going to talk about the power in vulnerability. So vulnerability and being vulnerable with your anxiety, your depression, and being honest and open with those around you who you trust can be one of the most scariest things in life. Trust me, when I was going through it, I didn't want anyone to know. I didn't want my parents to know, which obviously they did, but I didn't want them to know because I thought it was going to somehow make me vulnerable and make me weak and make me seem weak, most of all. And especially being a guy, us guys, we don't like to be considered weak or viewed as being vulnerable. It's something that is taboo in today's culture to be vulnerable, especially as a guy. But as a person in general, being vulnerable is not something that people are necessarily proud of. But what I've learned ever since coming out about my anxiety, my depression and PTSD and all that is that I have gotten to talk to some people who I never would have thought would open up to me about their situations, their issues that they deal with. I've gotten to know new friends who have opened up to me about that sort of stuff, and I found out old friends who I never knew had that stuff, had anxiety or depression or what have you. And I've learned a lot that when when you are vulnerable and you are open to the world about who you truly are, number one, it lifts a huge weight off your shoulders. It lifts this burden that you've been carrying around for however many years you've been struggling with this. It feels so good to finally just get it out there and be open about it and be proud of who you are, because to me, God doesn't make mistakes, and I truly believe that. And who you are, whatever you're dealing with, if you have anxiety, if you have depression, God doesn't make mistakes. You're in the situation that you're supposed to be in. Regardless if you can see why right now, it doesn't matter, because you will eventually. But for now, if you are currently someone who has anxiety or depression, and you don't feel comfortable with telling a lot of people or being really open about your mental health issues, that's okay. I don't blame you. It's a very, very hard and tricky thing to maneuver around when you're talking to others who might not understand where you're coming from or what mental health really is or what you truly have to deal with. So when you are talking to someone, when you are bringing up anxiety or depression to someone for the first time, I'm going to let you know what I did that worked for me, because I didn't tell just one person. Throughout the years, I've told many different people, and before it was like publicly known, I told many different small groups of people, like my best friends, my family members, my co-workers, stuff like that. When I told them, I basically sat them down and was like, hey, look, I need to be honest with you about something, but I need you to understand where I'm coming from, so that if I am having a bad day or I'm having an anxiety attack, you understand where I'm coming from. So you let the person know where you're coming from and why they need to know what you're telling them. That's number one. Number two, be as authentic and understanding of the other person that you're telling. So let's say you have anxiety, you have depression, and you're telling someone else about it. You have to realize that they might not understand what you're going through, so you have to almost coach them in a way of the steps that you go through, that you've had to go through along the span of your life that deals with mental health. So when you're explaining to someone about your mental health issues, be understanding that they might not understand, and that's okay. It's okay if someone doesn't understand. Not everyone is gonna see eye to eye with you, and that's okay. You shouldn't have a problem with that, because Everyone is different. Everyone has their own views and their own beliefs. That's why it's important to be selective about who you tell first. And if you can turn what you have into a positive, so let's say for me, for example, I have depression, anxiety, and PTSD. How did I turn that into a positive to help others understand what I have? You basically lay out what you're talking about in the format that is so easy to understand that someone can't not understand you. So if I were to explain my depression, my anxiety, I would tell someone, hey, look, I want to tell you something, and I don't want you to overreact. I don't want you to talk back to me about it. I just need to tell you, and I would hope that you could understand what I'm about to tell you. So let them know that you're not looking for responses, you're just looking for someone to talk to, and also give them the credit that they're willing to sit there and listen to you. So once you finally sit them down and explain what you're about to talk about, the way you kind of ease into it can be a little tricky, and it's different for everyone because everyone has their own specific issues that they deal with. So step 3 would be to basically talk about your let's just say you have anxiety, for example. You can tell them, hey, I have anxiety, and what brings me anxiety is X, Y, and Z. Help them understand what causes you anxiety so that next time you're in a situation with them where something is happening that's giving you really bad anxiety, they understand and they can also be there and help you out. So explain to them what your triggers are, what makes you depressed, what makes you anxious. Be honest with them about that so that they can understand and help you out if you ever need, and they can understand where you're coming from if you are ever in that situation and they happen to be there with you. So number 4, thank them as well. When you're done talking about your anxiety, your depression to them, they just sat there and listened to you because you asked them nicely to, and that's a really big step in any sort of friendship, relationship. When you can open up to someone that much about something that personal, that takes your friendship, your relationship with your girlfriend, boyfriend, family members, best friends to a whole nother level. So when you're talking to someone, just remember, be honest, be open, be thankful that they are listening to you, be understanding that they might not get where you're coming from, and that's okay. They don't always have to agree with you on what you're saying or the lifestyle that you choose to live or what problems you might be carrying, but at least you were honest and you were open. So regardless if they don't like what you told them, they at least understand where you're coming from. And that's the biggest key. You don't have to have someone like you or what have you if you tell them about your mental health problems. They just need to understand. Because once someone understands something, that gives them a bigger perspective and a wider perspective, wider range perspective of what it is like to be going through whatever you may have, PTSD, depression, anxiety, any traumatic experiences like that. So just be honest, be open, and tell someone that you trust, that you know isn't going to judge you for it. And I recommend, before you go out and tell the world that you have X, Y, and Z, I would make sure that everyone you are close to knows first, so that by the time you put it out publicly, if that's what you choose to do, that the ones who love you the most and who are closest to you know first, because they're going to be hurt real bad if they have to find that out through social media. So, and I've had a problem with that. I've done that to a couple people I know in my past who I didn't tell them, and then they found out through social media or my book, and that really took a toll on me because it kind of made our relationship a little different. So you guys don't make the same mistake I did. Tell the ones who are closest to you about that first before you make it public or tell anyone else outside of your inner circle. So if you guys learned anything from this episode, the one takeaway I want you to get is to just be yourself and to be vulnerable with the ones you love, because there's power in vulnerability. I wouldn't be standing here today if I hadn't had the support from my family, friends, my loved ones, and I couldn't have gotten that support unless I was vulnerable first and let those people in onto what I was feeling and how I was feeling. So the more vulnerable you are, the more others that you love can help you out, and your relationships will grow and they will be taken to the next level. I promise. So if you guys like this video, please leave us a thumbs up and subscribe down below to see our latest videos, and I will see you next week.